Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Spanish for Kiddos podcast, where you can listen to fun bilingual stories and more. My name is Barbara. I'm the owner of Spanish for Kiddos and your host for today's show. So today I want to share a special type of reading called informational text. And in this case, this particular text is called The Life Cycle of a Flower, El Ciclo de Vida de una Flor. And if you're familiar with informational texts, they're mostly non-fictional, and in the sense that the student or the reader will be able to understand parts of the story, or in this case, part of the text that is actually help them learn something else. Or they need the information for further reading into more complex concepts. And it's usually seen mostly with topics such as science or social studies, history, where there's plenty of reading text that you have to do in order to understand further subjects or in order to understand other concepts or more events, like in history, for instance. So in this case, what I did with this is actually put it into a fun story that you can read and relate to. And then at the end, there's several activities. And if you are going into, for instance, science projects for spring, you can do maybe a science project to grow a plant, like lima beans, for instance. You don't necessarily have to do that, but you can do other plants. And I'll discuss more towards the end of the story. So let's get started with our story today. There are flowers with special characteristics. Many flowers have pistils while others have stamens. Hay flores con características especiales. Muchas flores tienen pistilos, mientras otras tienen estambres. Once flowers fertilize, they form a new flower. The new flower carries seeds. Una vez que las flores fertilizan, ellas forman una flor nueva. La nueva flor lleva semillas. The life cycle of a flower continues. When the seeds grow, a new plant emerges. In this way, new flowers flourish in new places. El ciclo de vida de la flor continúa. Cuando las semillas crecen, una planta nueva surge. De esta manera, flores nuevas florecen en lugares nuevos. The seeds disperse to other places. Pollination begins. Birds and other animals carry the seeds. Las semillas se reparten a otros lugares. Polinización comienza. Pájaros y otros animales llevan las semillas. With good soil, sunlight and water, plants and trees give more flowers. More flowers produce more seeds. Con tierra buena, luz solar y agua, las plantas y árboles dan más flores. Más flores producen más semillas. Many times these seeds become pumpkins, apples, and other fruits. Muchas veces estas semillas son calabazas, manzanas y otras frutas. The end. El fin. And then with any type of informational text, there's also a glossary. And as you know, there's a lot of important key terms in there that I mentioned that are probably going to be new for students. Maybe perhaps they haven't heard of them before, or they might have heard of it. They don't quite know what that means. And so I include a brief glossary of that towards the end of the book so that they can become familiar to what they are. So what you can do is actually not just use this as an informational text, but actually read together to understand what those parts of a flower are. And in this case, what is happening to the flowers, to the seeds, and how they are actually being carried throughout to become more plants and more flowers, of course. And how is it that is just so important for us to have fruits like apples, for instance? So this actually, you can discuss this at any time, probably during your lessons during the school year, probably during the fall if you're going to talk about apples and pumpkins, or in the spring if you, like I mentioned before, you want to start a project on how to grow a plant. And as a matter of fact, I do have an easy science project to how to grow a plant from a lima bean seed, and I started this from a very basic concept. It's just a very plain lima bean seed that you can easily get at the grocery store and grow it in just a very simple way. So I include that in the show notes. It's called the Easy Science Project for Kids, How to Grow a Lima Bean Seed. And there's also a quick video how to set that up. And there's many different ways you can do that. I do recommend a glass because the glass container is very important for just for the reflection of the light. There's other science concepts in there that if you want to learn more about, you can do it with plastic. It might take a little longer, or a plastic bag. However, it might not grow as maybe you wanted it to. So I think glass is probably the best. And once you have the little sprout of the seed, you can move that to maybe a Ziploc bag or a plastic container. And that's probably a good idea too if you wanted to. The good thing is that you can observe the roots. If you have something like a glass or something like a plastic bag or a container like that, because you can really see the roots, you can really see how the sprout comes about and then becomes into a plant, the leaves, the stem, everything that is great about learning about the life cycle of plants. Another concept in there to start understanding, maybe beginning of second grade towards third grade, is photosynthesis. And there's actually a Spanish lesson on plants and learning about photosynthesis in English and Spanish. So you can check that out as well to help you if you're talking about the life cycle of plants, and also mentioning maybe if you have advanced readers or you have maybe other curious little science bilingual learners there that want to know more, how do plants really get their food, so to speak, but it's not really the food. Really is actually photosynthesis. That's what helped them grow. And where do they get their water? How does that work? And so it gives you a good basis in the informational part there of that lesson, how to talk about photosynthesis without getting too technical, of course, about any parts of the chemical or the scientific. So to keep it simple, to keep it straightforward so that they can understand what that is. So that is called the Spanish lesson on plants, learning photosynthesis. And then I also have some other wonderful life cycle literacy stories, bilingual stories, that you can check those out at different grade levels, of course. One of them is for grades 1st to 2nd, and the other one is probably for kindergarten and up, and depending on maybe the grade level or maybe the reading level that you might want to start introducing some of these concepts. So there's plenty of life cycles bilingual stories there in our shop if you want to check those out as well. So wonderful ways to start, maybe if you start thinking about some spring lesson planning, and that's a good way to get started talking about life cycle of plants and flowers. So thank you so much for joining me for this episode of the life cycle of a flower. I hope you join me next time as I read another fun bilingual story in English and Spanish. Thank you so much for listening to the Spanish for Kiddos podcast, and have a wonderful day.